legends, I hope you're all fantastic. We have the latest modulation pedal from the maestros at PastFx. This is the Cologne. It's not just one, but 3 different small clone circuits packed into a tiny pedal. And in fact, it kind of builds on the classic small clone idea and adds several new features in here, which we will go over. So you've got a rate control in the top right, along with a mix control and a level control. Then in the bottom right, instead of a depth knob, it's actually an 8-way rotary selector. So if you crank it all the way up, that's like having the switch in the high position on the small clone. And then if you take it to position not 1, 2, but 3, that's like the low position on the small clone. So you've got those classic sounds in there. Furthermore, there's this 80s, 70s, or 90s switch on here, which will give you those 3 popular variations on the small clone. Furthermore, you can run this one in stereo and you can change the phase of the outputs with this little push button here. On top of all of that, in true PastFx fashion, where they're building on what made the original great and giving you more options, you've got a high cut and a low cut for the chorus circuit in here. So we heard some sounds in stereo at the beginning. What I want to do is just run you through the range of this 8-way depth selector on here. So we'll start with the rate at around 1 o'clock on there. Level and mix, I'm going to crank up. Let's put this selector in the middle position, and I'm going to leave the high and the low cut in the up position, so they should be out of the circuit. This is a stock Fender Player 2 Strat. I'm on the neck position. Let's have a listen to this as a starting point. I will bypass it, then kick it in. I really like the concept of the 8-way rotary selector for the depth on there, because if you find that sweet spot for the depth out of those 8 positions, it's set and forget. Whereas if you're using a knob, which, you know, is going to do a lot of the same things, sometimes depth controls on Chorii can be very, very sensitive to placement on there, where you get just the right chorus and then, you know, a little mosquito comes along and farts on it and changes your settings, and then you can never get them back. Really like that on there. Let's have a listen now to what this error switch does on here. We'll start in the middle position, then we'll go down, then we'll go up. And, you know, this F#7 at 11 Alex Lifeson chord is just getting pummeled today, but you're going to hear it even more. So if you want maximum wobble out of that, you want this up position on here, go to the heaviest position on the depth control over here and crank up the rate. And for my taste, that's a little bit out of control, but if you're going for that psychedelic, almost Leslie sound, that will do it. The middle position is definitely the most subtle in there and almost sounds a little bit like a flanger at some settings. And then I think the down position is kind of the great all-rounder on there, you know, just rate at around 1 o'clock. If we go back to having the depth, say, maybe on position 6 over there with mix and level cranked up, I'll let you hear that. That's definitely one of my favorite settings on here. And then I'll kick in this little push button on here so that we can hear it in stereo. They have to be some of the best vintage Alex Lifeson chorus tones that I've heard out of a pedal on there in stereo as well. I know it says Kurtz Cologne on there. For me, I didn't grow up listening to a lot of Nirvana. I did hear that Come As You Are riff a lot as a kid coming out of jam rooms at school. But, you know, for me, when I think about chorus, Alex Lifeson is ground zero for me. So look, I think if you're going for kind of Nirvana-inspired chorus tones, having the three-way on there is great. It's going to give you access to the different, I guess, specific eras of small clone sounds in there. It can definitely do the super seasick chorus on there. There's a great character and sort of robustness to the tone that I really like on here. But as just a great all-around chorus pedal, I think it's fantastic as well. This 8-way switch I'm really into. I didn't think I would be, but just having essentially depth presets on there takes out one element of what can make chorus difficult to dial in. And then the level control, you know, if you want to match the input and output level of the chorus, I like it all the way up. A mix control on there to make it a little bit more subtle. We'll play with a mix a little bit, and then I'll introduce these high and low cuts in there. Actually, let's do it the other way around. Let's have a listen to what the high and the low cut do. I kind of really notice the low cut, especially with a dirtier sound on there. The high cut is a bit more subtle, and then I'll just dial the mix back a little bit. I like having those extra options on there that, say, an original small clone would not give you. if we really go hard with the dirt in a drop tuning and we have the rate cranked up, you're getting some of that kind of vintage Soundgarden, almost Leslie tone out of it, or you can keep the rate quite low and essentially you get a spatial expander style effect. So we'll start with the rate and depth cranked up on here. I'll just go through the different modes. I quite like having both of those high cut and low cut buttons in. Let's just have a listen to what we get. Now that is very interesting. Rate and depth up high is getting you that Soundgarden kind of thing, but rate and depth low, I'm getting like a Ty Tabor, early King's X aroma from that on there, especially in that stereo mode. And if you haven't been listening to this video in stereo, you might have been looking at me kind of going, dude, where's the chorus at? So please, I know you're probably sitting on the toilet watching this video, but you know, put your headphones in, listen in stereo. This thing sounds absolutely glorious. That's the Kurtz Cologne from PastFx. I will put a link in the video description to the PastFx website. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I absolutely love what they are doing in not only taking classic circuits, but improving upon them, giving us as guitar players and end users more options to find our sound out of these classic circuits. This one's such a great example where you get 3 different eras of the small clone circuit, plus the high and the low cut, plus the stereo outs with the phase selection on there, this 8-way rotary, so you have more options than the original. They do also mention, you know, if you want to cop the sound of the original pedal, where you should set it in there, which I really appreciate, but they just do amazing stuff as always. So big thank you to Verley at PastFx for sending this one out to me. Verley has been great in loaning me a bunch of vintage gear that you've seen here on the channel. So go and check out the PastFx website, send them some love. And I'm fairly certain that when you order these, they send out Australian snacks like Tim Tams. So an absolute bonus on top of that. I'm going to play around more with this kind of spatial expander setting. Have a great day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.